he's explaining what's explaining. It's all the connection between the darg of Loi Adam and Adam. The darg of Adam is Take Madrege with the Shaykh Shinuim and his Chalkos. But it's rooted in Loi Adam, it's connected to Loi Adam, it's Midas Gdusha, and therefore it's Shaykh, the of Iskalolus. And he demonstrated Lamaila, the Eibishter's various examples, illustrations of two opposite Midas being expressed simultaneously, but more specifically, what that means is that since every midah is incorporated with the other ones, so chesed can come in the lavush of gevura, and gevura can come in the lavush of chesed, as illustrated in all of the examples brought earlier. So now we're up to in Avodah too. There can be the union of Iskalolus, and that's expressed in the person himself. That the Adam is on the one hand, min atachtonim, at the same time min elyonim, mechitzasi of the Marishan is before even the Malach Hasharis. So there can be the union of Iskalolus, but that's what we're up to right now. Zois above, yeah, page 223. Omdom kol zeh. We mentioned earlier that where's this all going? That this tremendous avodah we're describing now, the iskalos, that's mitzat chalishas hamidus, as you're going to say, the weakening, the softening of the midas, as you'll explain. There's a deeper avodah, and we'll see at the end that's the avodah of the Avos. That's really the test of the Jew that goes beyond the malachim. Let's see. What does it mean by iskalos, a unity that comes because of a weakening or a softening of the midas? Answer. The reason that chesed, even as chesed is chesed, nonetheless, as we explained earlier, it incorporates and comprised of the other midas as well. That is a midas. Likewise, gvura is comprised also of chesed. That's because Shemidas HaChesed Einoi B'chol HaToikev K'mei B'midas D'Toyu. Because the way Chesed is in Atzilus down, and that's where the Neshama is born, as it were. It's in Atzilus and down, Chacham Atzilus and lower, many levels of Neshama. So there, the Midas are not with their essential intensity as they are in the Olam HaToyu. In the Olam HaToyu, which is already we can appreciate is a higher Olam, it's a greater Gilui than the Olam HaTzilus, which is called Olam HaTikon. Tikon integration, by the way, this will be the subject of the Shabbos Maimer. It's a famous Maimer in Torah, upon which much of Chassidus is based, where the Alter Rebbe explains why the spheres are called Tikunin. What's this word Tikunin? Spheres have many words to explain or refer to the Midas. A very basic, very clear, elementary explanation of the Esses Sfiras of Atzilus, the Tzimtzum, basic ideas, the Tzimtzum being not in the Mo'er, but in the Oer, the four Shittas. Doesn't address all four Shittas, but just lays out, as explained in the Chabad Chassidus, and you'll see it's really a really basic, beautiful Maimed. 8:30, it's an hour before Shacharis. And the idea is to try and finish the whole Maimed, most of it inside, then the rest I'll give by heart. So I'm mentioning it because the Midas Lamaila in Toyo are not Tikkun. In Toyo, there each Mid, it's a higher Madrege, and there's no integration there. There's no integration. The Midas are fundamentally independent. Chesed is Chesed and not Gvura. Shebehem Ne'amar, and that's why about the Midas of Toyo, the Pasuk says, in describing the descendants, the kings of Esav. So it describes them, it mentions 7, if I'm not mistaken, the 7 Midas. And Vayomos Vayimlech. One died, the other one ruled. Hinting to, there's no room for simultaneous expressions. That's why it's chaotic. but it's chaotic because it's a higher level of alikus. Chesed is chesed, and gvura is gvura. So when we talk about integration, that's because of a softening of the midas. Yeah? In a way, yes, we'll see. In a way, it could be more masudar, it could be the ultimate kavanah. We have to harness and channel toyu. But the way it was there, it was chaotic. It caused the shviras hakelim. We'll talk about that when we get to the end. Yeah, good point. I mean, the fact is, it's a higher level. Toyu is a high madrege, so we're calling it chaos. Good. But there's chaos of Kedusha. We'll see. So when we talk now about integration and all the midas, incorporating and embracing even opposites, where does that start? That starts in Atzilus. And why does it happen there? It's actually a weakening of the intensity of the midah, weakened by what? Seichel. What dominates Atzilus is Chachma. And Chachma is Bittul. So let's see. This is all Toyo first. Toyo works, you can't have two at the same time. There's no integration. It's only after one midah has been this battle or recedes. The vayomos, that's the death, as it were. The neshama leaves the guf. The midah is withdrawn. Then a manifestation of another midah, gvura. But they're not, there's no coexistence. That's the way it is in Toyo. But in Tikkun, there is integration. Because what dominates Atzilus is Moishe. That it's despite themselves almost, that the Moishe makes the Midas understand that you have to have the other as well. A pale is a bittel, as he explains. What's Moichin? Moichin begin with is objective understanding of truth. That's bittel. You want to know the truth, whatever the cost. Midas are the self. This is my feeling. And it's hardwired. Chesed is chesed and gvura is gvura. Moichin isn't. Moichin is just understand. It's just openness to understand whatever needs to be understood, no matter what the consequence. And he goes on even further to say, a very interesting statement, again, no footnote to this, no other source, it could be unique to this Maimer, and that is, Kinyan HaSeichel, this does say, Kinyan HaSeichel is boin b'mashal ha'mayli meno. The true inyan of Seichel is to search and inquire that which is above the person. It's to resolve mystery. That's what Seichel should be used for. Now, the next line that's unique, Shaliyal adas. It's incomprehensible, unacceptable. That a person should invest his seichel, his loftiest faculty. And use my seichel to figure out how to mimala my taivas. What a terrible waste of seichel. Seichel can inquire and discover mysteries and things that are beyond me. So the Rebbe is saying like this, he's obviously that's what we do, but he's saying it objectively. It's what a waste. And loyal ladas, not tongue in cheek, but really stating the way it should be, that a person should use his seichel for something which is lower than seichel. So if that's what seichel is, the whole point of seichel is, that's what koyach matz is asking the question, what is this? The mystery is trying to understand, trying to grasp that which is beyond the person. So that's bittul. The person is contemplating, entertaining that which is beyond him. We're talking about true concepts that he's trying to grasp, which are currently beyond him. So he's in a state of bittul, as an awe, as he grasps it and begins to understand it. So through the intellectual process, pales in a person bittul, as he's constantly open to that which is beyond him. And therefore, having concluded the whole inyan of Seichel is bittul, it's objective. It's objective seeker of truth. That's what Chacham is. It's constantly asking the question of what's behind this, what's deeper. So, therefore, since midas are born from Seichel, we learned earlier, which is where he's going to go with this. They're shayrish. Their shayrish is higher than Seichel. It's rooted in Netzem HaNefesh. But they're born, their emergence is through Seichel. And since Seichel is what? By its very nature, objective bittul, entertaining other views, seeking other views, not wanting to be locked in one position. So therefore it pales in the midas shebayim. It also pales in the midas, since they're born from seichel. Even the natural midas, as they are born from seichel, this is when the way it should be, when a human being is worthy of his name, meaning a bar seichel. So then the moyach rules them. It's a natural process, not a miracle. Moyach shalit ala lev is a natural process. Midas that are born from reasoned intellect will be tempered therefore by intellect, and the midas therefore will embrace other midas, realizing it's not just pure emotion, this is emotion that's expressed as a result of an objective truth, and therefore there's bittul, and there is the embrace of other emotional components in the emotion itself. The chesed will come below in gevur, and the gevur in chesed. That's not thanks to chesed. That's thanks to the bittul that seichel brings to the midas. It opens them up to incorporate the opposite. Lahachlish is to weaken them. It means this virtuously, to soften them, and to be therefore acceptant of and embrace another midah. It's therefore it's seichel that pales the bittul. In other words, we're talking here about atzilus. The parallel of Maila is atzilus. Atzilus is integration of that's where the first level, where there's integration of midas, and what pales it all? The chokhmah atzilus, the bittul that dominates the whole experience of atzilus. Whereas in toiho, as we'll presently learn, the midas are all independent atzmistic expressions of elikus. And in that sense, intolerant. We'll soon explain what that means. Intolerant of another midah. There's a yachaliyas, but now we're talking about the pool of seichel. So there's a yachaliyas. Iskalo shalam midah achas and midah hafchis. So therefore, seichel pales this objectivity, this reasoned goal for the midas, and to achieve that, the midah happily. You want to show love, but now discipline's required in your love of your child. Okay, so we'll give mussar. No, it's the seichel that softens and opens the midah to achieving a reasoned and virtuous goal. Moyach shalat ala lev. Or befrat moyach and the godless is two levels of moyach. There's moyach and the godless. This is a profound maturity. Tremendous maturity. Such a maturity that simultaneously the two midas can come and operate together harmoniously in the face of Moich and the godless. That's already a very high level, which we quoted an example earlier for Kanal Binyan Pashem Mishpote Shom Polo. There where the person is being judged, Shom Polo, there his pa'ulas are being entertained at the same time. The good things that he did as he is being judged. So not an angry, judgmental mood only, which we can't entertain the good things that he did. Tomorrow we'll talk about his good things. No, while he's being judged, there's such a maturity, such an objective transcendence that while the person is being judged and meted out punishment, we're also factoring in equally and acknowledging his virtues and good things. This is Meichan the Godless. Meichan the Godless is a person that can really relate and behave and communicate with someone who is an enemy and a real enemy, but do so if now chesed is required, then it's chesed. And he deals with the person in a way of chesed. But it's all in a way to defeat him and betrays. And he's not acting. It's Meichan the Godless. He actually, the chesed, midah is actually expressed here. Few people obviously have this level of equanimity and maturity to be able to completely harness the emotional engagement guided purely by seichel. It's not an emotional thing. It's an objective truth we need to get to that requires that overall is gevura, defeating the enemy. But right now it's got to be done in a way of chesed. And it's emes of chesed. He's not acting chesed, he's expressing a midah of chesed. Because that's what has to be, that's what needs to be harnessed to serve the goal. The person's got to feel this chesed. It's meichen the godless, in theory, it's wonderful. But we get caught up in our worlds. It's hard to transcend it and see the big picture. But it's possible. And that causes a natural hiskalelus. So what's happening? In some reads, it's the chalishus of the midas. So let's continue. So this is the first piddush in the word ma, maloshem, something. But it's still connected to the first word. It's still part of ma, which means bittul, because the midas, the something is bittul. We're talking the midas are midas. Each one bears. A sevel is more than bear. To be sevel is to what? Tolerate. But he sends this mokim and gives place the midah hafchis for another midah. Conclusion: now here we're talking about this kind of iskalulus. Is the iskalulus that happens because of the effect of the intellect that softens the hard, rigid borders of the midah, allowing one midah to tolerate and embrace another midah. That's not the tachlis. That's merkava. That's lifting Adam to loy Adam as described now. But there's a much higher avodah, and that's the maila of the avos over the merkava, the natural merkava. That's coming now.
This was described as it was Adam, but the perfection of Adam, the best way Adam can be.
Is
Loy Adam, yeah.
This isn't what?
This wasn't Loy Adam. Yeah.
It's still loy Adam, because we're bringing a bittul to the midas by drawing on the loy Adam. So the loy Adam of it is going to identify it is the loy Adam is high in the world of midas. It's seichel, but it's a chitzonius dike bittul. It's still not the true loy Adam. It's a step up from complete subjectivity, but there's a deeper level of loy Adam, which is a much higher avodah. So it's still, in other words, this is the merkava l'mayim. That's what the malachim. It's a natural. Hishtalshel is his nature. Meichshat alev is natural. This is normal. When seichel is revealed, the midas acquiesce, they get softened, and there's integration. And that's symbolized by the merkava, where the malachim, which are the midas, the chayis, lift the totality to the level of lay Adam, bringing integration and harmony. But that's not the dachlas aved. It's a kind of a natural thing. It's to be expected. A human being should be a bas seichel and a meichem the godless, and his emotions will naturally follow the dictates of seichel. So that's the perfect human being, as it were. But there's a higher avodah, a godly avodah. That's ishtalshalus. That's natural. There's an emes, a godly avodah embodied by the obetz, which is going to describe now. But the tachlis of libavedes adam he shaloi zebluvad shemitzad achlishus v'abitl shebemidas. The tachlis of Eloi is not only, look at footnote 84. So they say this paragraph. So some of the details were addressed in the Fabrengen, the Shabbos that followed, Chaf Aleph Kislev. Now, if you look there, they actually only bring one little vort, and they say the rest of it is in the Maimer. But this vort is a very telling vort, and it's a vort that, a story that we shared the other day, and Yossi, you shared a story about it. You're going to talk about it on Shabbos again, I guess. And as you remember, that the Rabbi said this was that he's referring to there in one word the story that I shared from Tafshin Yudalid Yud Bei Shvat, the Shabbos after Yud Shvat, famous Fabrengen. The Rabbi is talking to people in between the sichos, and he says to one fellow, "You and your father-in-law," that's what he says, "your problem is that you're terrified, you're constantly afraid, on guard that someone else is going to take away from your demus. Your demus means your stature, the Emes says that nothing in the world can take away from what's coming to you. On the contrary, you help somebody else, you'll be gained." And that's the Rebbe says, to this the next Shabbos. in avodah, that you help your competition. You actually go out of your way. The next shliach is a competition. You're living border to border. It's money. It's people. Shtayim Eichs and Betalis. Shtayim Eichs and Betalis. Two people that fighting over a talis. So this explains what's the fight here. The Nitzos Kedusha. Who's going to elevate the Nitzos Kedusha? It's my birr. He says my birr. That has a whole beer that Al Pi Niglan, Al Pi Chassidus. Mind blowing. It's Shtayim Eichs and Betalis, which he wrote before the Nesias. A story for that. We should learn it. It was published after Gimel Tammuz. So this is the bittul he's going to now. This is a bittul to Kedusha. It's not just protecting your own territory, you do, but actually helping the other person who is your competition. Helping. This is true Moishe and the godless. Let's see it inside the Maimer. The Ruchni is the Pnimius of it all. So till now we're talking about what a reasoned is scholarless. Because the midas is softened. There's a high madrege, shegam kasher midas chesed gvorim betoikev. We're not talking about softening them. We're talking about the midas as they are in toyu, or we're talking about the midas as they are mushrish in the etzem hanefesh, independent of seichel and actually higher than seichel. The pure midah, even there, Nasabem Yiniskalus Vasholem, the whole Tachlis is that even on that level there should be a scholarless and Sholem. Boyfriend Shemakaplim Zem is that the one receives from the other. The Yain Shleim is the Midas Achas, and there's no Shleim is to one Midah, Beli and Midah Hahafchis. Integral to the Midah himself, he's not complete without the other one. Before the Chura, this is the Pshat. I think what he's saying, like that before we're talking about Seichel, is Seichel as an objective, a transcendent objective. So therefore, to achieve that, he's your enemy, you've got to act in a way of Chesed. All right, so the Midas go along. The Midas go along, so the Chesed is being used by the Seichel's overall objective for a Gevurah to achieve the end result. But this is not talking about where the actual midah of chesed feels, as it were, that its shleimus is in gevurah. They're kind of both being used and softened by the high objective of seichel. That's what's happened here. Seichel is its objective, and therefore a midah is born of that, will surrender to the seichel and will be softened by the objective of seichel, and you'll behave in a way that's going to bring the bottom line. Even though the overall objective is punishment or love, sometimes you have to use the opposite levush. What he's going to describe over here is the midas as they are in yonam heim, the essential midah. That the midah in its own world, not because Seichel is giving it, a bigger picture. In its own world, it feels independent of Seichel, that its shleimus is with Gevurah. Tall order, what does this mean? To be explained. But I hope we're understanding the difference here. Not where the midas are in the face of a third level, as it were, that softens them seichel, but rather the midas in the world of midas, olam hatoyu. No seichel olam hatoyu. It's each midah is fire, and there in that level, the midah is margish, that it's not b'shleimus without gevurah. Now in olam hatoyu, that didn't happen yet. It's the potential for it. That's why it was a shattering. The whole avodah is to channel these oiris of toyu and fix them, bring the harmony of Atzilus to Tohu. Not compromising the midah and have harmony there. Not because of a surrender to Moishe, but in its own midah. These are all oisius, I understand that. We're going to learn it, the Maimon to explain it.
This is not higher than Tohu. Tohu has to be broken. You can't accept the other one. Here you're saying that where they are, they have to be. That's a
avodah. The whole avodah is not compromising the oil of Tohu and still have integration. Not weakening it. You remain with your intensity, but completely one with Gevurah. We'll explain it. It's all oisius right now. It takes a full ois to get to it. Let's start the journey. Shizel, we're in the middle of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in the bottom, in the middle. Found from the top of this paragraph. We're talking about a bittul that's not induced by seichel, softens, weakens, manipulates, because seichel. Before we're talking about when seichel is the natural father and mother of the midas. So the father and mother have control over the midas. Now we're talking about the midas as they are rooted deeper than father and mother, than chacham and bin, in etzem nefesh. And there's the bittul. Shekol midah ein lo shleimus ba'atzma. The tachlis haveda is that the midas should feel, we'll explain what this means later, that its own shleimus is dependent. The hainu she'ein lo mahus. If you don't have gevura, you're not chesed. You're nothing. The lo yasvira ha'ofches. This is the money to give on to you. The scholarless is so much so that chesed is margish, he's not chesed without gevura. Yeah, but it's but you're not hearing. The whole avodah is to bring that to the atzmis dikemidah of Toyu. Toyu is where the atzmis dikemidah is revealed. There's no tikkun. Seichel has not softened it. It's there. The avodah is to pale that is scholarless, which means don't give me cheshbonus as a higher agenda. That the midah itself is margish, that it is nothing without gevura. Let's learn and see what it means. It's only when they're all together that it's a davar shalom. Without the other midah, chesed is not chesed and gevura is not gevura. Yeah, well, I said already, that's really going out of your way, giving the kavod, giving the honor for the one who is your competition. Investing koich and effort there. Huh? It's to your detriment. And here you help your competition. Yeah, it's not the same as before. Before is the chesed. It's this the example of punishing your enemy. This is a gevura moment. That's what the gevura to be effective. He's going to come, as it were, borrow the lavush of chesed. It's going to come. He's kind of borrowing the lavush of chesed, because seichel says to defeat your enemy, you can't do this with pure gevura. You got to show love now. You got to approach it in this approach. It's not the midah itself. There he's talking about having a gishmak, a chesed, in giving to this person that on the practical level takes away. This money goes to him, not to me. He gets the kavod, he gets the person. But that's your shleimus. Without that, you're nothing. You're not a shliach. That's what it's really saying here. You're doing a wonderful job in your town with your people. This is very sharp words. No, this is more than Moishe the Godless. Moishe the Godless was the softening of the midas in a very, very fluid way. This is not Moishe the Godless. This is a much deeper avodah. We're just starting, but I'm just giving you the end goal. The end goal here is that he does with the gishmak helping the other person. The midah has the gishmak in it. Not the seichel, the Moishe the Godless that sees the big picture and therefore behave in a chesedic way. Chesed is fulfilled in the act of surrendering its chesed.
So not because people should hear what a nice, generous fellow you were, humility to give over.
Obviously, yeah, not because of that.
Not because of that, and not the opposite of holding it into yourself, because that's the devil, is holding all of your contacts and but more than that, and that's what I was saying, that avoid how to do it. How do you get to that mind frame that you're talking about?
We're good. We'll learn. There's discussions to the etzem, but we'll see. The mind will spell it out for us. Okay, let's make another learn. Finish the sentence. Okay, we'll continue. We'll continue this. It's the next year. So the number 85. Today's story. So we're clear, this is not in of Meichin the godless. This is not a greater maturity. What does that mean? That means put your feeling, soften your feeling a little bit. Don't get so excited. Now it's a time to get your objective. You be malbish. The objective again might be gevura or chesed. You love your child. That's just the reality. To love your child, the seichel says you got to discipline sometimes. So the seichel wins the day, and the midas coalesce. The midas surrender. We're not talking that. Here we're talking in the etzem ava is gevura there, and if there isn't gevura there, then the avas is no ava. So we'll see how the Maimon explains it. That's avodah. Avodah is the term kelim the tikkun. That's the whole avodah. And as I said before, if we're not, he's saying, as the shliach, whatever, if this is not be'emes integral to your shlichus, then your shlichus is not shlichus. It's missing. You are a shliach, pe'el mamish, everything is good, but it's missing really in the emes and the kud of a bittul. The iskashus is missing. If that shouldn't be a geschmack for you, and in just as integral as my own avodah is helping the next guy. It's not, okay, I've got to do it and sacrifice and for the bigger picture, the whole cheshbon of seichel. No, it's much of the geschmack in it. That the mind will explain. If it's rooted in etzem, that's what's going to happen.